Hello, everybody, and welcome to Forever Sports. What a story on a Friday morning with World Rugby boss Alan Gilpin coming out and basically saying we need more people like Rassie Erasmus in the world. A complete change of tune from the man who, in the article itself, talks about the fact that he has been part of the World Rugby that has banned Rassie Erasmus twice, but spoken about the fact that the innovation he brings and the ideas and the passion he brings is good for the game, which is actually pretty landmark, to be honest. It's quite a big moment because it means that kind of the way we are pushing boundaries and the way we are asking questions and the way we are kind of looking to play, for example, is not being basically challenged by World Rugby, or at least not, officially, but in fact being embraced. And I think that's a very, very good thing. I've been very critical of World Rugby in the past over the fact that they don't innovate. And as soon as people start to push boundaries and start to try and try new things, there's a big pushback. And they're kind of always sort of almost seen as sort of enemies of progress. And I'm hoping that this small little, hopefully, change of mindset could be a bit of a sign of better things to come. Because we've seen a World Rugby which is so hesitant to change, which is so resistant, I think, to change. And that's, I think, the frustration. Us as fans, we want to see innovation. We want to see our game being refreshed all the time. We want to make sure that World Rugby create a product that is sellable, that we can enjoy, that we can consume, and that we can grow. We want to be able to grow the fan base. We want to be able to make sure that people want to be involved in rugby and want to watch rugby and want to, engage with rugby content and the likes of that. And through that, you've got to be innovating all the time. You've got to try and keep refreshing and making sure that you sort of keep your finger on the pulse, really, of what is going on around the world. And it's a very interesting article because if we go back a few years ago, it was Rassie Erasmus versus World Rugby. And almost at one stage, quite blatantly so. During the British and Irish Lions series, the video, obviously, about the refereeing, he's been banned twice because he also then posted a whole bunch of clips, for example, on Twitter, which they said, And it was quite a big sort of knocking of heads. What didn't help World Rugby's cause is the fact that Rassie Erasmus went on to win back-to-back World Cups. So he was always, first of all, in the public eye. He was succeeding. He was the best coach in the world. So you couldn't really ignore him. But it also meant that any action you took against him was always going to be very, very widely covered, for example, and met with a lot of criticism because South Africa is one of the biggest fan bases, arguably the biggest fan bases in the world when it comes to rugby. And therefore, in the past, where, for example, he was banned or he was challenged and he was reprimanded in inverted commas by World Rugby, there was a big resistance against them. And South Africans are very, very tribal. We protect our own. And any sort of attack against one, attack against all type of thing, we've got that big mentality. And there's been a huge backlash against World Rugby previously from South African fans. Whether it's justified or not, well, that's up for debate. But now we are seeing an article where, Alan Gilpin's had to come out and said he's really good for the game. And I really hope that this is now a whole new chapter and a page being turned. Look, Rassie himself has admitted he got things wrong, and he's going to get things wrong. I think that's quite obvious. And the big thing is we've got to understand when he's right, when he's wrong. We've got to be fair in our assessment. If he crosses the line, we've got to be fair and say, I don't think that's right. But he also gets so much right, and he gets so much more right than he gets wrong. And the fact that he's so self-aware, I think that's what makes him such a phenomenal rugby mind. Is he's so self-aware. He's very happy to say, listen, the way that he used to put on Twitter and stuff like that, not the right way. Regardless of whether what he believes in terms of what the content he put out is true or warranted, the way of doing it, was wrong. And he admits it, and he says he got it very wrong. And now they're finding a much better way of creating those communication channels with World Rugby so that they can push boundaries and innovate without causing issues, really. But let's go into the article, shall we? So basically, this is an exclusive with Planet Rugby, written by Alex Pink. There we go. Go and watch it and go check it out. One of the best, probably the best rugby website out there, to be honest. Planet Rugby, really, really good stuff. Eddie Jones this week had a very good column about inheriting Rassie Erasmus's laptop. But basically, let's go through some of the comments, shall we? And here we go. And because one of the parts of the comments is the fact that Scott Berger recently made a call to say, I don't think Rassie is a big favorite in World Rugby, to be honest. But a lot of that was previous stuff. So now we've now seen Alan Gilpin come out and give it his take. And he said, my personal view is we need to embrace what Erasmus brings to rugby. He said, I've spent time one-on-one with Rassie. We've banned him twice in my tenure. He says Rassie can be very confronting because he is incredibly passionate about rugby. He is incredibly passionate about what rugby means to the South African public and his responsibility as he sees it in that regard, which is very true. You know, Rassie is live or die Springbok rugby, South African rugby, and rugby in general. You know, he is a traditional rugby fanboy. That is it. You know, he just loves the game. You can see where he talks about it, you know, the way he sort of talks to the team, the way he talks to players, the way he talks to the media. He just absolutely lives and breathes SA rugby. And I do think that is quite a good assessment, because I do think sometimes that passion has led to some of the actions which have caused bans, for example, maybe where he's overstepped lines, the likes of that. So we then see him saying over here, saying it's like early Arsene Wenger. He said he comes in and says, actually, why are we doing it like that? I think it's actually a very good comparison, to be honest. And he says as follows, to finish. He says, look, we would always say to Rassie and any other coach, you, like any passionate, invested, high-performing coach in sport, are incredibly frustrated when you think match fishing and other things have an impact on your team's ability to win. He said, but you've got to work with us on that. He said, help us make the system better rather than criticizing match officials in a way that we know when coaches or administrators or players criticize match officials gives the online haters permission to pile in. Please don't do that. Please work with us. So you can see already, obviously, there's been engagement and there's been, you know, conversations there. So he said, I think Rassie's heard that. We've had good conversations about that with him and with other coaches, to be fair. And so he's responded positively to that over time. Does that all make life, what we do, easy? No, but you need those innovators. Rugby needs innovators. And that, I think, is the main takeaway of this entire article, is the fact that we've got to basically focus on the fact that the World Rugby are engaging with the box and basically saying, listen, let's not do things like that. Let's not do that. But the main thing as well is that they need to be open to feedback. And I think that's what they're intimating at. They're trying to be more open to feedback and trying to engage with Rassie Erasmus and say, right, what are you not happy about? How do we change things? Because I think the frustration comes, and this is when coaches do speak out, when they feel that they can't change these things, or they can't get feedback, or they don't understand why things are done the way they are, and they just can't seem to be able to engage with the people at the top to maybe change systems or improve systems. And that's when they resort to Twitter rants and coming out in press conferences and. So it's good to see that there seems to be conversations happening with World Rugby. You know, that's very important, I think, for the future of the box in terms of being able to understand where we stand and be able to get things right. So it's a positive step. You know, I don't think, even as Alan Gilpin mentioned, I don't think suddenly this is cool, water under the bridge, we're all 100% okay, but it's a step in the right direction. He is right in what he's saying. World Rugby and rugby in the world needs Rassie Erasmus, and they need more people like Rassie Erasmus. Whether or not World Rugby genuinely believe that behind the scenes and whether they're going to genuinely back him up in that regard remains to be seen. But hopefully this is a first step towards fostering a much better relationship between the two parties. What do you think? Is this just lip service from Alan Gilpin? Is this maybe a genuine coming around from World Rugby? What do you think? Let me know down in the comments below. Smash a like on the video. Subscribe to the channel as well. Thank you very much for watching. My name is Steve. I'll chat to you soon.